Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful November 20th, 2019. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's a tiresome day, staying up late watching football 7 days a week. It's hard on an old man. That's a young man's game.
7 days a week, it's hard to do anything 7 days a week, but keep breathing, Big C, and we'll keep breathing. Everything is going great in the world of sports. A lot of teams deciding right now, where they're going to end up when it comes to NFL football, even college football. I hate when people who don't play the game decide who's going to play it, but it's always been that way, Big C. We know NBA basketball, congratulations to LeBron James. Maybe he is the best ever. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, you said you're staying up you say you're watching football 7 days a week? You must have it on video games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's amazing how the football schedule works out now. You got NFL and college football seems to be running basically night after night. But, this is what you are when you're a football junkie. You want to sit back, watch the game because the season seems long, but it's also too short.
Yeah, it's like guys that go to rehab. They always say, I can stop when I want to. Why stop watching football? It's all good. Big C Sports brought to you by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You're welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the mystic, and he'll do his thing. And really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I want to also get into our National Suicide Hotline, and it's for military veterans. We pay homage to them every show. We know we have our freedom because they sacrifice. It's also for civilians, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, I know oftentimes, and as you've mentioned so many times, the whole national thing about standing for the flag and not respecting the military, and then people came on last week for Veterans Day. They were even going to military bases. They were wearing the military garb. And then it's like you haven't heard from them since Veterans Day, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, we have veterans every day in America, Charlton, and we have veterans with horrendous struggles every day in America. That once they leave the support of our armed services, Charlton, is that they really have no one to turn to as far as the huge family that they've been involved in. And many of these veterans, Charlton, have been stricken by this horrific disease called suicide. And people think of it as an embarrassment, so they don't like to talk about it.
Right.
And it's something that needs to be in the national spotlight on a daily basis, because not just veterans, Charlton, people in America, layman everyday people, a lot of teenagers and youth are taking their lives through suicide. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there hoping to try to stem the tide of this horrific disease. As America, we put so much emphasis on other diseases. I mean, cancer is a horrific disease, and we put a lot of research and interest in that and publicly, Charlton.
Yeah.
We don't talk about opioid abuse enough. And you think about opioid abuse, it gets more attention than suicide in America. And yet opioid can be eliminated through the manufacturers, Charlton. Suicide is something that is a devastating thing to many people.
Yeah.
Families, Charlton, are left wondering why. Why didn't we know? Why didn't this person seek help? Well, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, is there for people to seek help and not let other people know if you don't want to, Charlton.
Yeah.
You can go with anonymity. You can call this number. There's people there to talk to you that are not going to judge you. They are there to help you. And that's what we need more in America, is people to help.
Yeah.
There was a song, when I was growing up, I was older, and it was like, reach out and touch somebody's hand. Make this world a better place if you can.
Yeah.
And I think it was Diana Ross who sang the song. It eludes me who did that. And that's what the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number does, Charlton. It reaches out and touches somebody's hand, makes this world a better place if we can. And that's what we need to do for all the veterans.
Yeah, and I love that number is 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255. I was just talking with a friend today, and I'm not going to mention her name, but she was telling me how devastated she is because she's just going through a divorce, and I can't believe this guy did all these things to me. And she met him on the internet, not that long ago, one of those internet guys that preys on women. And she met him, and everything was great. It was through the I guess they call the swooning stage when you're trying to become that knight in shining armor. So he was wonderful until they got married. And then she started getting abused. And it was so bad she thought about taking her own life. I said, that's so dumb. I'm glad you didn't do it. Not seeming insensitive. I've never been abused in my life, Big C. But there are times when people need to know you can call somebody and get some counseling. Sometimes people don't want to call 911 because they don't want to get the guy in trouble. I've never understood that. Guys beating your butt, choking you out, and you don't want to call 911 because you don't want to get him in trouble. So I don't understand the pathology behind that, Big C. But that number, it can help a lot of people in many different situations, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it can, and I could, like you said, I can never understand somebody being in an abusive situation and not wanting to call 911, not wanting to get the other individual in trouble. Yet they're here putting your life in peril. But that's the sickness and the phobia that people have, Charlton. They kind of think that it's their problem, that they created the problem, not the other individuals who's committing the crime and the atrocity against them. But they think that they had something to do with it, and they're sitting there trying to figure out how can they work it out and make it better.
Yeah, and I just told her, and I'm glad that she's okay. I'm glad she got out of it. Some women are not fortunate, and I'm just telling her the same thing. I just wanted to give that PSA because I know she's telling me a lot of her friends, they go online and they meet these strange guys. There's a movie called Mr. Goodbar. I think it's Looking for Mr. Goodbar, and I think it was back in the 70s. And it's about these women that let men know, hey, I'm desperate. Will you please let me be with you? And sometimes it doesn't turn out right. So my PSA from law enforcement, also a lot of women who have talked to me about their problems, they meet up with men that they meet on these internet sites, and the guys Jekyll and Hyde. They're one thing in private, and they're another thing when they get you where you don't know other people. And I just want to say, don't let it happen to your kids. Teach them about it. If someone can't meet you in your own circle, why they gotta, scrounge around on the internet? I'm just glad she made it through, Big C. So for all the women and men, just be careful. I mean, date a friend. You don't have to date someone you don't know. That's my opinion. And I know, Big C, I'm not being flippant. Let's just be real second. Everybody loves dating and meeting somebody, interacting with somebody. But for any man that has a daughter, I wonder how many men would tell their daughter, when you go out to meet someone you're going to want to date, make sure you find strangers on the internet and then hook up with them. That's dumb, in my opinion, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you can't judge that on everyone who has a daughter, Charlton, because so many women out there are fatherless. That they're raised in single-parent households, so that they don't understand the rites of passage of how a man is supposed to treat a woman. When you look around in society and you got these date sites, Charlton, because they weren't brought up the traditional way. If you think about also these gentlemen entertainment clubs, these strip clubs that are around, everybody in these strip clubs is somebody's daughter, Charlton, but where they're around their father enough to understand that, there's other plights in life that you can take, education and so on, to make that type of income. So to judge on what somebody does, you have to understand their background completely. Yeah,
that's true, too. Just glad she's safe. She knows who she is. I want to also, in the world of sports, and I know there's something about how reality is, and I want to just applaud when somebody does something, and you can count it, Big C. You can Google it, as we always say. I do want to applaud LeBron James for so many things, and ironically, before applauding LeBron James, before he was the only player in NBA history to ever score a triple-double against all of the other 30 teams in the NBA Big C, because, he's played on different teams. And that is a feat that we don't even think about. There have been so many great players, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, of course, the great Wilt Chamberlain, Big C. We think about, everyone talks about Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. It goes on, Dr. J. The list goes on and on. Just give me your feeling. And LeBron's still climbing that mountain. It's not like he retired, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you mention guys like Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem, there were 30 teams in the NBA during that time when they were playing, so they couldn't accomplish that feat. The way that LeBron has been able to accomplish that feat is that he's become a vagabond in the NBA. He's played for multiple teams. That allows him to go back and score a triple-double against a team that he was once a member of.
Yeah.
You can't accomplish that feat if you spend your career with one NBA team. As astonishing as the feat is, Charlton, LeBron James is, last year he was thought about by many in the media as being washed up, and I think he's on a victory tour this year to serve notice to the NBA that he is, one of the elite players still in the league, and that he's going to have to be contend with night after night. Yeah,
he's going to have to be in that situation, and I love, as we talk about things that matter in life, there's a lot of things that I admire about African-American men. We were talking yesterday, and we've been doing this for a long time. It's not just about Kaepernick. There's a lot of people that do things behind the scenes, and because they're not well known, they may not be on TV, people saying don't give them a job for whatever reason. But I do appreciate the fact that today's nouveau riche athlete, especially African-Americans, that have been able to just transition out of this game into something that might be even more lucrative. I think Jim Brown was the first one that did it, if my understanding, when he was playing football for the Cleveland Browns. Decided, I guess he was in a contract dispute, and they made it difficult on him. Like a lot of guys, like Dak Prescott might relate to that, and he got the chance to do some acting. Of course, it didn't hurt that Raquel Welch was a side, kicking the acting business, but he started that where a lot of men, their careers were not over when they scored their last touchdown or made their last tackle, Big C. That is something that LeBron and a lot of guys are doing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Willie Strode was the first big athlete to do that, Charlton, and Willie Strode was a teammate at UCLA with Jackie Robinson. He went on to play 10 years of professional football, and he got into acting back in the early 60s, late 50s actually, is when he got into acting once he saw that his career was coming to an end. He transitioned from football to, acting, and John Wayne was one of the main reasons why he was able to get in. Both of these guys were opponents against each other in college. John Wayne was at USC, Willie Strode was at UCLA. Paul Robeson followed suit after that as an African-American, also, Charlton, getting into the acting field, leaving basketball behind, transitioning into something that would be long and lustrous for him, getting into theater, in New York on Broadway, and had a long and lustrous Tony-winning career in that. Jim Brown happened to see what these individuals were doing and decided that would be the best plight for him also.
Isn't that amazing that you go back to that day? I think it's at Willie Strode, and I know one of the things that people were talking about when LeBron came out to L.A. last year, and even before he got injured, I think they were right about the number 4 spot in the Western Conference. And there's some people saying, well, the problem with the Lakers is LeBron's out here to make movies. He's not trying to become the best, L.A. Laker ever, Big C. But I think when you look at, even going back to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I remember watching him in movies growing up. There's something about men that, and I know you've been in TV and radio for a long time, you don't have to be one-dimensional to be great. You just got to be focused when you're doing your thing. A lot of actors are very reticent. They're gregarious on the screen. That's because they say action, and they know how to play that role. So I've never thought it was a bad thing when you're multi-talented, but sometimes that's pushed back on. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, many actors living in the Los Angeles basin, Charlton, have transitioned into the movie theaters and television. This is something that everybody has a fantasy for. If you look at actors and actresses, they all fantasize about being a great athlete. And when you look around the arenas in America, whether it's basketball, tennis, hockey, baseball, football, you also see the people that are on the big screen sitting up in the stands, resonating and fantasizing wishing that they could have one opportunity to do this. I know Billy Crystal one time went on a few occasions went to training camp with the New York Yankees to get a bat in a preseason baseball game, Charlton. The ultimate fantasy for a person is to be a professional athlete.
Yeah.
You see everybody on the street, and I don't care who you are, what financial status you are in America, you will trade whatever you have to spend one day as your favorite athlete playing that sport.
That's amazing, and we always ask athletes to be role models and go out to schools and, read to the children or just to be an example, because it gives people something to look up to, and everybody wants to feel significant, and everybody wants to have hope. So I hear LeBron James, congratulations. The man is still climbing that mountain, and I think he has a lot of basketball left in him, even though he's already made something accomplished that no one else has done but him. I want to look at tonight's NBA schedule. The New York Knicks at the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, just namesake alone, New York and Philadelphia can't be more than an hour and a half or two apart, Big C, especially when you're on train. And these are two major markets. Why is it that Philadelphia has been, I think the last time the Knicks were really relevant is when the great Patrick Ewing played there. And I know they played the Houston Rockets in the finals, but Philly has been more significant since, it seems. And why is that the case? If New York's the mecca of everything, allegedly, why don't we have championship teams lately outside of the Yankees, Big C? The Giants have been many moons, and they got lucky on the Patriots. I can't say it's lucky because they won. The Jets have really been abysmal. And, we talked about Mark Sanchez got them to their last two playoff wins. And then their hockey does okay, Big C. But why is it the Knicks just can't be? They could be the marquee team in basketball, Big C, and they're not. Your thoughts?
Well, it's like any major city in basketball, Charlton. When you go out and you draft a lot of young players and you turn them loose in a 24-hour city and you say be responsible, they're responsible for their social life, Charlton. They're not so concerned about basketball because they have millions of dollars in their hand. Look at the Lakers over a 6-year run when they were in the bottom of the league and drafting all of these young players, saying that they were going to build through the draft. They were a doormat in the NBA for 6 consecutive years, Charlton, trying to build with young personnel. They got rid of all those young players, made some trades, and went through free agency and brought in older veterans. Now they're in the top of the heap in the NBA West.
Yep.
New York has not done that. They keep trying to build through the draft. You can't take 19 and 20-year-old kids, put several $1 million in their pocket, and say concentrate on basketball only.
Yeah, I think that's a very salient point. The San Antonio Spurs playing the Washington Wizards, and then you have the Charlotte Hornets playing at the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn, I don't like their floor. I feel like, and a lot of young kids like it, the AAU circuit, but it looks like you're playing outside on cement, or is it just my eyes, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, like I told you, I still haven't seen an NBA game yet. I wait for Christmas because football is such a precious sport. You think about it, it's the only professional league, Charlton, that there's a 7-month layoff between games after the Super Bowl until the preseason starts again. Basketball, you got a 4 or 5 month layoff, just like in baseball, and you're back at it again.
Yeah.
And so I don't get excited about the NBA realistically until Christmas.
And that's because when they open that box of presents, you got probably some NBA media passes, Big C. The Cleveland Cavaliers at the Miami Heat, the Milwaukee Bucks at the Atlanta Hawks. I still think the Hawks are a playoff team this year in the Eastern Conference. If they stay healthy, they're playing arguably the best team in the Eastern Conference tonight, and that's with Giannis. And I'm so glad that people are not calling him out of his name anymore as if that was a compliment. I don't want to mention what they used to call him. The Magic, Orlando Magic, at the defending NBA champions. And you may never, ever say this in the next 25 years, defending NBA champions, Toronto Raptors hosting the Orlando Magic. Big for your thoughts.
Well, basketball is about getting hot at the right time. We've seen many teams make it to the finals having a run in the playoffs. Toronto will make the playoffs again, even without Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah, they will. The Golden State Warriors, 5-time defending Western Conference champions. They're down in Dallas playing the Dallas Mavericks. This kid by the name of Luka Doncic, I know the Sacramento Kings could have gotten him, and they passed on him for Marvin Bagley as their top pick. And it seems like, and I hear a lot of young people saying that Luka has such a skill set. He's a young person. He's only going to get better. I hope he can stay healthy. Would you consider him the best perhaps. I mean, the best European player ever. A lot of people can say maybe, but it's too early to say that. But he sure is on the right pace. Big C, your thoughts?
He could potentially be the best European player ever. He's the best young player in the NBA. He's the best second-year player in the NBA. This guy came into the NBA with a skill set. He had been playing professional basketball since he was 14.
Yeah.
He learned the proper way, the fundamentals of the game. He wasn't trying to be a highlight reel, Charlton. He's played against grown men his entire life, and his game is transcended to the NBA.
Yeah, and he's not talented like Dirk Nowitzki. Dirk had that arcing shot that no one could block, and it was just a matter of time. Manu Ginobili, this guy had that same kind of dribble, step back dribble. He was kind of like James Harden before James Harden, not as athletic, but same kind of savviness. And so I want to see what happens with Luka growing up. Big C, the Detroit Pistons at the Chicago Bulls, the Utah Jazz at the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Houston James Harden can't miss a shot Rockets at the Denver Nuggets. This is a preview of a playoff game, maybe not the Western Conference Finals, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it may not be the Western Conference Final, Charlton. It's early in the season. But a point back to Luka Doncic is talking about his skill set. He's second in the NBA in triple-doubles already this year.
Yeah, he is, and I don't know how, but sometimes it's not flashy, just like the Joker wasn't flashy last year, but he scored. Kevin McHale wasn't a flashy player, but he got you solid minutes, and time will tell. People start to adjust to how you play, and then we'll just see how his career turns out. The Celtics at the LA Clippers, which a lot of people were feeling at some time starting the season that this could be a preview of the NBA Finals. The Clippers have just they've gone back to who they used to be, like a second fiddle to the Lakers, no matter who's on that roster. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Lakers, Charlton, they're a team of wily veterans. They've put it together early. As long as they stay healthy with the size that they have, they're going to be a challenge for everybody.
Yeah, that's very true. Before we get into the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, I want to just pay homage to my brothers that roll around on ice. I know you like ice, Big C. You use ice if you bruise your knee. You use ice if you want to put something in your libation. If the cooler or the cooler's not working, you put ice on your armpits or the palm of your hand, keep it cooled off, Big C. But them good old boys that make a living on ice in the NHL, Toronto Maple Leafs, they fired head coach Mike Babcock, so he might need some ice in his libation. The decision came the day after the Maple Leafs lost 4-2 at the hands of the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and they fell to 0-5-1 in their last 6 games. I think 9-10 and 4 on the season. I hate when guys get fired in the early part because they can always turn things around, and oftentimes that may just be personality driven. He's going to need a lot of ice in his libations. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's unfortunate, as you say, when a head coach in any professional sport loses his job, and you're just 20 games into the season, and the Toronto Maple Leafs decided to make a move one quarter the way into the season. The Toronto Leafs haven't won the Stanley Cup in forever.
Yeah.
But they saw the downward spiral that the team was taking, losing its last 5 contests, Charlton, on a Western road swing out in Las Vegas, and they rolled the dice and got rid of the head coach.
Yeah, and remember for the Washington Nationals, they were under the same pressure. Get rid of the manager. I think they started out, they had 19. They were 19-30 or something. They were starting out really slow. And then to come on and win the World Series is only because management stuck with them. So that's why I think it's personality driven. If people don't like you, they find a way to let you go and not fight for you. Big C, that make any sense?
Well, this was a team with a lot of promising talent. They had the Rookie of the Year last year in the NHL, and they were expecting big things from the lineup, Charlton, and they just haven't developed.
Yeah, well, I know he'll land on his feet. And just it's a matter of who you like and who likes you. That's always part of life. I want to just say, as we go forward in the world of sports, I know a lot of the times, as you talk about NBA basketball, it gets more sexy after Christmas. I do want to pay a little bit of homage to college basketball's Big C's top 10 at the polls. I really do miss the days of the UNLV running Rebels. That's because that's when I got hooked on basketball. Jerry Tarkanian, he had brought his act from Long Beach State, taking it to UNLV, ended up going to Fresno State, the late Jerry Tarkanian. I remember watching Loyola Marymount play against the UNLV Running Rebels and UCLA back in the day with the great John Wooden. And just so many, Lute Olson down there, Arizona, seen a lot of great basketball on the West Coast. I miss those days. Duke, number 1, Big C, and followed by number 2, Louisville. And I hate the way they treated one of the coaches that did everything that everybody else was doing, but he got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when we look at college basketball, it's different than all other collegiate sports. Is that the top-ranked teams play each other throughout the season, Charlton. Yeah. And so you really get a gauge of who's the best teams in college basketball.
It'd be great if football did that, but you don't get enough chance to rebound from a loss in football, so that's why a lot of teams avoid each other. And then, so those are the top 2. Michigan State, the Spartans, coming in at number 3. Obviously, when you play in the Big Ten Conference, you're going to get the chance to build your resume against programs like at Indiana or at Michigan, of course, Michigan State. You know, Purdue has a good team all the time. Ohio State's always good. Michigan State's doing in basketball what they haven't really been able to do in football, though. Your thoughts?
Well, they started out the season ranked number 1, Charlton. They got knocked off on opening night of the season, so they've fallen a little bit in the rankings. But Tom Izzo has a solid foundation and one of the best point guards in the country.
Yeah, he's always a great recruiter, Big C. North Carolina, another blue blood. Thinking back to the days of Dean Smith, and when they had Worthy, they had Perkins, they had, of course, Michael Jordan. Always a team that everybody wanted to go to. And it's amazing, you get Duke and then North Carolina. They're not that far apart campus-wise, but it's as if most of the country, they come to those 2 programs when they have the top programs and the top high school talent, Big C. How do they do that when they're both in such close proximity, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Tobacco Road, Charlton, and those 2 campuses are 18 miles apart, it's the tradition of winning.
Yeah.
You know, they don't steer away from a formula that's been consistent. When you think about Southeast basketball as well as Midwest basketball, Charlton, the formula of how they develop these kids and keep them at home, you know, has been consistent, and all the top athletes around the country want to go to these schools because they're always on national television.
It's amazing how I can understand when Wooden was winning back in the day, you wanted to go to UCLA. Lou Alcindor came there out of Power High School, went to the great UCLA. Of course, you know, Bill Walton went to UCLA. A lot of great players went to UCLA. Westwood, it's Los Angeles. It's a great place. And so that's why I don't understand how Kansas, they're number 5 in the country. I know you say they have a lot of paper bags in Kansas, Big C, and people might understand the paper bag thing. But to get people to go on a recruiting trip to UCLA, recruiting trip to Duke, North Carolina, and then there's Kansas out in the middle of nowhere, but they've been one of the most dominant programs for many moons, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it comes down to facilities, Charlton. When you have antiquated facilities, and a lot of West Coast teams are like that, you just can't always draw in the players around the country. You think about Poly Pavilion at UCLA. This is the same facility that they were playing in when you talked about Alcindor being at UCLA back in the 60s. So when you go to Kansas and they build a new facility and it's about a decade old now, this is what attracts players. When you look at the amenities, players want to go where they're getting something special.
Yeah.
They know they're going to play on television and they want to play a national schedule. And when you look at the teams that are in the top 10, all of those teams play a national schedule. They travel. They play tournaments in Hawaii and other places across North America. So when you look at the West Coast and they're not offering these things for these kids, they're often going to go to these other universities that stay in the top 10 and are on television on a regular basis.
Yeah, that's very true. I know they renovated Pauley Pavilion. Oregon has the craziest looking floor. And the women Ducks are ranked number 1 in the country or number 2, depending on what poll. So there's a lot of growth happening when they put money into it. Virginia, last year's defending national champions, they're at number 6, followed by Maryland. I remember the days of Maryland when the late Lynn Bias came out of Maryland and drafted by the Boston Celtics. What a tragedy that was. But it was still a great program that's managed to stand the test of time. And the new West Coast power, Gonzaga, up there in the Spokane area of Washington, and that's in eastern Washington, not on the coast where Seattle is. I don't know how they're doing it, Big C, but as you mentioned, it's a small environment, and people go there, and they've had more success than University of Washington and Washington State from that great state of Washington. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Mark Few does it right. Charleston Gonzaga's been on the national stage for a decade and a half. They've been consistently in the NCAA tournament. They're the flagship when you talk about West Coast basketball in that small arena up there in Spokane, Washington.
Yep.
But Mark Few knows how to recruit. He recruits internationally, Charlton. Well, one of the things about a lot of college basketball players that come in with a lot of flash, they come in with a lot of baggage also, is that they don't know how to be team players. You get a lot of one-on-one highlight players, and when they get to college, they don't always transition into everybody's game. They don't all understand the team concept. And when you talk about the teams that are in the top 10, all of them have dominant coaches who have tenure at their university. They're not talking about moving these coaches out because these coaches have a mentor mentality, Charlton, that it's my way. I can get rid of you and get somebody else in here. And so you're going to play the team basketball the way that I want it played, and that's the reason why those programs stay in the top 10.
Ohio State number 9, Kentucky number 10, and again, they're all playing top competition. It's amazing how college basketball, unlike college football, they can afford to do it because they're not always going to play each other week in and week out. So that's Big C's top 10 college basketball. Everybody has their own flavor. We're going to come up on what's called the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about some NFL football, and you're going to love what we talk about in the second half. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I really love are Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television, launching on Roku TV, Fire TV, Apple TV, and a lot of other smart TVs all over the universe. You know, when you think about justice and how people can do things, and sometimes you get away with things, Big C, sometimes you don't. But I just say that you have a right to stand up for what you believe in. When it comes to some NFL football, we know the thing that happened in Cleveland only taken off the scale by Colin Kaepernick in the NFL deciding who's going to be fair and transparent. So I want to get your thoughts. Myles Garrett, we all saw what happened, but the NFLPA contended that the worst punishment any player received for a similar incident was actually Houston's Antonio Smith, who was suspended in 2013, Big C, for 2 preseason games and 1 regular season game for also swinging his helmet at then Miami Dolphins offensive lineman Richie Incognito, and he may have earned it, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, as I look at the NFL and its rush to judgment, the indefinite suspension can be altered at any time. Myles Garrett and the NFLPA met with the league today in New York City to discuss the suspension. And this was part of their defense in bringing up the suspension of Antonio Smith back in 2013. So the league does have a gauge, Charlton, for what Myles Garrett had done. Many people thought that this was a first-time incident that somebody had ever swung a helmet and hit another player. No, it's not. Richie Incognito, people know about his dirty and toward history in the NFL. He's been suspended on multiple occasions by the league. Myles Garrett's actions, they're not suitable for the game, Charlton, they deserve discipline. But to be indefinite, in 3 games with a benchmark, that's the same amount of games that Pouncey got for punching and kicking Garrett. Charlton was 3 games what Antonio Smith received.
Yeah.
So I think that the league, and I thought originally that it might be a 10-game suspension, the rest of this year 6 games, and 4 games until next year, Charlton. I think the league will let it stand for this year with 6 games as far as a suspension, and then reinstate him at the beginning of next season. But there's no place in football for players taking and swinging the helmet at somebody else. There was no place in football for the actions of Mason Rudolph, who instigated the incident. If he had stayed down, Charlton, and let the officials get in and intervene, then it would not have escalated. But every time there's a negativity in the NFL, it takes two to get to that point. And Mason Rudolph wanted to get into a tussle with Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
He kicked him in the groin intentionally, and then he came after him after he ripped off the helmet. He didn't have enough. He wanted more. Myles Garrett, unfortunately, suffered the brunt of the penalty.
Yeah, and we know that depending on what angle they want to show the quarterback, especially Caucasian quarterbacks, oh, he was innocent, he didn't know what happened, and he was just a victim of someone who was being foolish on the field. Again, I challenge anyone, if someone were to walk up to you and kick you in the groin, you would say that person's not at fault for what you would do in retaliation. That's just an opinion. Anyone disagrees, just put it to the test. Have your coworker kick you in the cojones and do nothing. I'm sure most people would fight back, and it would lead to both guys being suspended, Big C. That's my opinion. But when we think about something, too, we could talk about what happened on the field with professional athletes. And we can hear people that are so upset about Colin Kaepernick wanting a job. He didn't smile enough. You know, he read the contract and realized, wait a minute, you don't put a chicken into a fox den, Big C. Not if the chicken can read. You ever met a chicken that can read? There'd be no one at the barbecue restaurants, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, when you look at the actions that occurred, it was a farce all the way. I never thought that the NFL had genuine intentions because of the timing of setting up this alleged workout, Charlton, and then you come with certain language. No one knows what was in the language of the contract except for those that were participating.
Yeah.
But I never thought that the NFL was genuine because you were doing it on a Saturday, which is a travel day for the majority of the league's teams. Not only that, you got all the major scouts out at all the top college games and small college games looking at players' potential draft picks, Charlton, or even free agents for this upcoming year. So who are you really sending to watch Colin Kaepernick if this was to take place?
Yeah, people are already in the city. When people play a game on Sunday, they've already flown in on a Friday or sometimes Saturday, but mostly they'll get there. They're definitely there Saturday. A lot of teams are flying on a Friday and will do their walkthroughs on Saturday and play on Sunday. So you don't do a workout on that Saturday, Big C. But I want to just jump to what's coming up this week on Thursday, a huge matchup in the AFC South. And you think about it tomorrow night, the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I know I'm pretty decent with geography, but I don't think any high school kid or college kid would flunk a test if they said geographically that Indianapolis is in the north, but the NFL put them in the south. So it's just the AFC South. Indianapolis doesn't make any sense. But they are going to fly south when they play the Houston Texans. And both teams are tied for first place in the division at 6-4. And I think if you saw what happened to Houston when they went into Baltimore, into that Lions den, then that has to give Indianapolis some hope, Big C. They already beat them the first time. Your thoughts?
Well, that's like saying the Dallas Cowboys, who forever have been in the NFC East, and I didn't think Dallas was anywhere close to the East Coast.
No.
But as you look at this game tomorrow night, this is a must-win game for both teams. They're tied at 6-4 atop the division. Houston is stinging after coming off that devastating loss at the hand of the Baltimore Ravens, Charlton, last weekend in Lamar Jackson's spectacular performance. Once again, you got a matchup of two young African-American quarterbacks, two third-year quarterbacks in the NFL. Jacoby Brissett, who's came back last week after a knee injury had knocked him out for 2 games, and got the Colts back on winning track, Charlton, tying them up in the division with the Houston Texans. The Colts will be without top running back Marlon Mack, who broke his hand last week and is going to miss several games, Charlton, so they have to find somebody who can carry the mail. T.Y. Hilton has been outstanding all year long at receiver for the Indianapolis Colts. We see Deshaun Watson. He's going to have to rebound from that dismal performance that he had last week, only producing 1 touchdown for the Texans against the Ravens. Everybody talks about Jackson, but it's the Ravens defense that is really carrying that team above what Lamar Jackson does with his spectacular plays.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to see Deshaun Jackson step back and bring out one of those old Deshaun Watson performances, Charlton, because the Houston Texans, since they've lost J.J. Watt, has not been the same team defensively.
Isn't that amazing? He goes in for it didn't look like he was that injured when he went off the field all by himself, and then ended up having surgery, and then things haven't been the same for their defense. It's amazing that you bring that thought up because everybody just they focus so much on the quarterback all the time, and you never really know that it's a defense that wins a lot of championships. And I'm looking forward to see what happens in that game. I also want to just jump around in a couple of players that we think about in this league. And for one thing, this talk about Tom Brady that is mad that receivers aren't getting open. Something's up with New England's offense. It's amazing they're still 9-1, yet they don't really have a passing game. The running game is suffering because they don't have a passing game. And as you just mentioned, it's their defense that's helping them win. You go on the road to Philadelphia, you only give up 10 points against a team that was waiting for the ambush. The Patriots did not have a good offensive game, but their defense covered for them. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Patriots' offense, Charlton, it's been a work in progress all year long. Their passing game has suffered with the loss of Rob Gronkowski. They got rid of Josh Gordon. They released him. He's in Seattle trying to be productive there. But they have no deep threat in their offense. Rob Gronkowski had no problem going deep from the tight end position because he was a difficult matchup for anybody. So Brady really doesn't have anybody in the lineup that can go over the top. Their top pick, N'Keal Harry, out of Arizona State, has not been able to get on the field. They had to make a trade for Mohamed Sanu. He's still learning the offense. They thought they had it fixed when they picked up Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
But he couldn't put his damn phone down, so he's out of the NFL.
Yeah.
And so as Tom Brady goes, the offensive line also, Charlton, a lot of people don't realize they lost two of their key starters. They lost Andrews at center, and they lost Wynn at tackle. So the offensive line has been rebuilding. They actually have 3 new starters on the offensive line this year. So the cohesiveness is not there. It's not just Brady. It's everybody. You got to learn how to play the system. The New England system is very integral. Everybody can't fit into it, and that's the reason why they've had such a tough time with receivers.
Well, another system, I want to take you to the Minnesota Vikings, and I know there's always talk on Kirk Cousins. Never won a playoff game, never got this team that far. And then you look at the Minnesota Vikings. Would you believe something you've been saying since week 1? Run the ball. Dalvin Cook for the Minnesota Vikings, he passed 1,000-yard rushing mark for the first time in his career, Big C. It's amazing. I know he had the injury with his knee, but the first time in his career because he wasn't getting a lot of touches. And think about this. He's the first one to do it in the Vikings since Chester Taylor back in 2006. That's 13 seasons, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Adrian Peterson back in 2006 and now you have Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, this is the reason why they drafted him in the first round 3 years ago out of Florida State, because of the explosiveness that he had. He was underrated by many teams coming out, Charlton, but while he was in college, he averaged 6 yards a carry on the ground. Very explosive, ran a 4.3 40 at the combine, but his knee gave him problems, and he missed an entire season. Now that he's healthy and the Vikings are depending on him, just like any team with a winning record, if you can depend on a running back, you take a lot of load off your quarterback, Charlton, and it makes it much easier for him to complete passes down the field.
You know, when you think about that, taking the pressure off your quarterback. Remember Garner Minshew when he came in, when Nick Foles had the shoulder injury in week 1, and Minshew came in and set the league on fire for the first couple of games. Would you believe the Jacksonville Jaguars only have 1 rushing touchdown this season, yet they have Leonard Fournette, who many people consider an all-pro running back, Big C? That's part of the problem for Jacksonville. Is not they can't find a decent quarterback. You can't run the ball, your quarterback's going to look really bad, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, in his second game playing with Gunnar Minshew, Leonard Fournette rushed for 223 yards.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that he had broken out of his slump, but all of a sudden he went back into a shell. Inconsistency mars Leonard Fournette's career, Charlton, since he's come from LSU. He hasn't been that consistent back that everyone thought he would be when he was taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, and I know everybody talks about opportunity. You just want a chance. I remember everybody wants a chance, Big C. And I like this guy, Jameis Winston, because of his potential. But think about what he's done. Jameis Winston's already tied a career high. He reached it. It's a low, actually, when you think about it. His 4 interceptions, it boosted his 2019 total. He has 18 interceptions in less than 10 games. And Colin Kaepernick is being told, well, we don't know if he has the mentality or if he really wants to play. If you're Coach Arians and you've had some great quarterbacks under your tutelage, this is a guy that can help you get over the hump. If you have 18 interceptions and you haven't played 10 games, why is that not more open to competition from anywhere, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you look at what he's done compared to what Phillip Rivers has done the last 2 weeks, and Phillip Rivers has thrown 7 interceptions in the last 2 weeks. Jameis Winston's thrown 18 in 10 weeks, Charlton, so that the ratio with Phillip Rivers is more devastating, but no one's talking about benching Phillip Rivers. He's going to stay the course with the Chargers. Jameis Winston, this has been a consistent struggle throughout his career. It's just you're wondering what is he seeing and not seeing in quarterback.
Well, Landon was saying that he's going to stick with him. Of course, you don't throw your quarterback under the bus, but why? We've seen Winston get benched. I'm not saying Drew Brees got benched because we know he was injured. Cam Newton didn't get benched. He was injured also. And then Eli Manning did get benched. He wasn't injured. And I think Lynn, I don't think his job's in jeopardy at all because that playoff last year, it bought him another year, I think, especially as African-American coach. You don't want to throw let's just be honest, a white quarterback who everybody loves under the bus. I think being good to the prodigal son in Rivers keeps him in good favor. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you're not going to bench Rivers because if you bench Rivers in San Diego, then you have to replace him with a black quarterback, Tyrod Taylor. That's not going to happen. This is not what they do in the NFL. They don't bench white quarterbacks for black quarterbacks. The last time we saw that in New York, Geno Smith replaced Eli Manning. The coach lost his job. Bob McAdoo was gone.
Yep. Well, I know it's all about giving people opportunities, and when you get the prodigal son, you stick with it. Adam Vinatieri, Big C, the kicker, I remember him kicking the Patriots to a couple of Super Bowls also. And think about what this man has done. He's the first Colt to score 1,500 points, and he also broke the record for field goals attempts at 170 in NFL history. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but he's also cost the coach at least 2 games outright, Charlton, with missed kicks at the end of the game. Adam Vinatieri has been around for a long time.
Yeah. If
his name was not Vinatieri, he would have been released a month ago out of the NFL.
Sometimes they let you hang on a little bit longer, just like wine. You don't throw it out when it's older, Big C. Last thing I'll get on before I want to get some thoughts on some college football is if you look at the Oakland Raiders in the final year in Oakland, this is a team right now that was hoping that Phillip Rivers would have played better football, and I know that they're hating Phillip Rivers for some reason because they were going to be neck and neck with Kansas City. I don't think they're going to catch Kansas City, especially they're going to play again later in the season, and they're going to have to go to Arrowhead and win, and they've hardly ever won a game at Arrowhead. But the Raiders, it would be something if they make the playoffs for just the second time in the last 16 seasons here in Oakland. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Raiders are playing better than many people expected, Charlton. John Gruden made many wholesale changes with the organization. Derek Carr is completing passes at a phenomenal rate. Brandon Jacobs has been better than advertised at running back, most likely the front runner for Rookie of the Year in the NFL. And this defense with a lot of young hats on it, Charlton, is doing just enough to keep the Raiders in all the ball games.
Let me get your thoughts on this, and I know we'll talk about it on Big C's thoughts on NFL Countdown that we do on Friday, but I'm really interested in seeing how Prescott does and the Dallas Cowboys. I think they really got to get Zeke Elliott and that offensive line blocking better to go into New England, but some hope that Dallas may have is when you look at how they played so poorly, or they were just dominated, the Patriots were, by the Baltimore Ravens. I'm not saying the Dallas Cowboys defense is anywhere near as good, but you do have a similar quarterback in Prescott and Jackson. Prescott can throw for 400 yards and you can still win. Normally when you have to throw for that many yards, you're going to lose. But I want to get your feeling because New England can be had. They're not the dominant team of the past. They only scored 17 points on the road at Philadelphia. I think Dallas has a better team than Philly, especially offensively. Dallas can probably go to New England and at least get 21 points to maybe 24 in Foxborough. But New England doesn't seem like they're the team that's guaranteed to get you 30 points, Big C. That might be if there is an upset to happen. You can't have Prescott throwing for 400 yards, but 300 and 100 from Elliott. But Elliott's only had less than 100 yards in his last 2 games, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at the Dallas Cowboys schedule. They played the Detroit Lions earlier in the season, Charlton, and they struggled against the Detroit Lions, pulling the game out in the last minute. The head coach, Matt Patricia, was a defensive coordinator in New England for several years, Charlton. So his defensive philosophy came from Bill Belichick, who the Dallas Cowboys are going to be facing this week.
Yeah.
So Bill Belichick is going to take excerpts from what the coach, Matt Patricia in Detroit, did. Not only that, New England has the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Dallas has done big things. They've been a big play offense. They haven't been a consistent offense. They've been a big play offense. And when you look at what they did passing last week with 444 yards, they're not going to do that against the New England Patriots. You also got to understand there's going to be inclement weather up in New England. It's going to be cold. When you look at Dak Prescott's big numbers, they've all come indoors. They have not been outside in the elements. So those are things that Dallas is going to have to face. The offensive line has lacked continuity in Dallas. Ezekiel Elliott just has not been the back that he was. I mean, similar to Todd Gurley.
Yeah.
When Todd Gurley has struggled this year at running back in Los Angeles, Ezekiel Elliott is doing the same thing in Dallas. Running backs wear down. This is the reason why they don't want to give them a lot of money.
Yep.
Because as soon as they get money, they get hurt and their yard production drops.
All right, yeah.
When I look at New England is a team that wins. You know, they're not going to be the most flashy guy at the dance. They're not going to be the prettiest car that pull up in the parking lot. But something that they have at the end of the day generally is a victory.
Yeah.
And until you beat them, you can't bring your statistics into Foxborough and say, hey, we're going to come in here and beat you. I think New England has won 19 consecutive non-divisional games in Foxborough, Charlton. So you're not just going to walk in there and with your pretty, shiny car and say, hey, we're going to beat you.
Yeah, it's a game I know a lot of people are looking forward to. And so the NFL standings, and we'll cover it more on Friday when we do Big C's NFL thoughts. New England, they're at the top of the division at 9-1 in the AFC East. In the AFC South, Indianapolis is tied with Houston at 6-4. In the AFC North, you have Baltimore at 8-2. And then Pittsburgh's hanging in there, but they're 5-5 in the AFC West. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Oakland Raiders are coming in at 6-4. It's amazing with all the change in Oakland, they're still hanging on. In the NFC East, Dallas Cowboys are 6-4, followed by Philadelphia at 5-5. Will Dallas go to 7-4? It might be brewing, Big C. We'll have to see. I don't. Nobody believes that they can do it, but a couple of good old boys down in Vegas. And then in the NFC South, New Orleans 8-2, Carolina 5-5. In the NFC North, they have the geography right, Big C. They have Green Bay in number 1, Minnesota number 2, and Chicago, Detroit. Geographically, they're all aligned to be in the North, Big C, and in the West, the 49ers 9-1, Seattle's 8-2, the LA Rams 6-4, and Arizona 3-7. Remember back in the day when the Carolina Panthers were in the NFC West, and the New Orleans Saints and the Atlanta Falcons were all a part of the NFC West with the San Francisco. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that was a long time ago, Charlton. All of those teams geographically had a bad alignment, and the NFL eventually got that right. It's just like Pittsburgh used to be in the Central, you know, and you think about where they are. They're an East Coast team, and they're in the Central Division. Now I guess it's the AFC North.
Yeah.
But geographically, the NFL has gotten a lot of things wrong over time. When the Cardinals used to be in St. Louis, you know, they were also in the NFC North, West, as well as the St. Louis Rams were in the NFC West.
Yeah. It's all a part of getting enough teams to stretch that map, Big C. Also, we talk about player conduct, and players, they want to appeal their suspension, and Myles Garrett. Sometimes our society is a little bit crazy. We talk about our national suicide hotline. I know all the agony that went on with Penn State, Nittany Lions under Joe Paterno and Sandusky. Penn State football, the quarterback, Sean Clifford, would you believe a college kid was receiving death threats after the team's only loss to the Minnesota Gophers on November 9th? What knucklehead would threaten a college kid who's there to go to college and play football, would threaten him with his life because he lost a football game? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a sickening society that we live in today. Here's a college kid. He threw 3 interceptions in their only loss to Minnesota. and he threw the final one on the last drive with a minute to go in the game. And yet, on his social media account, Charlton, he started receiving death threats.
That's horrible.
This is a kid. This is a young man. And he didn't want to go out and lose the game, nor did he try to do it intentionally.
No.
But to receive death threats, we live in such a heinous society now, is that all of these things have to be taken seriously. We've seen the dozens of school shootings that have taken place, and people that have lost their lives, Charlton, because of some knucklehead.
Yeah.
And this is what social media does to people. And this is one of the reason why I don't deal with social media, because there's too many knuckleheads out there. And I hope they turn this over to the police department at Penn State. That's what Clifford and Coach Franklin did. And I hope that the police find this person, Charlton, and that he gets incarcerated, because this is a death threat on a young person who was in college first to get an education and play football secondly. And yet you can't be comfortable. This came in a social media rant.
Yeah.
This person with anonymity could walk up on Mr. Clifford at any time and not know who he is, Charlton. So I hope that the police do their due diligence, get this person, put him behind bars, and punish him to the extent of the law.
I hope that too, and that's why I'm reticent with a lot of social media myself, Big C. Everybody has an axe to grind, but sometimes you don't know it, Big C. I want to say you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker.com. The apps that I really love is called Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. Also, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast Television, watching on Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs out there all over the universe. I want to finish up today's show talking a little bit of college football. And again, if you're part of Penn State, I hope they really investigate that. Big C. Should never happen to anybody. But the worst teams in college football, and I hope they're not getting this type of garbage behavior either from society, as Colin Kaepernick can't get a job, but you have knuckleheads that are doing foolish things to young kids. The worst team right now, bottom 10, Georgia Tech. I put them at 10. They change their offense. It takes time to change things around from an option team to a pro-style team. And then Arkansas, the SEC, has really fallen on hard times. And then you have Rice out of the Big 12 in the bottom 3. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at those three teams, Charlton, they've had a abysmal season. Arkansas has gotten rid of their coach. They're on a coach search right now. Rice lucked up and got a win last week.
Yeah, Rice tastes good in soup, Big C, but not on the football field. Rutgers coming in number 7, followed by Vanderbilt, which had a pretty decent team last season. And then number 5, UConn, which is a great basketball power, but they're without their own conference, and I hope they'll find one to go to. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's tough being an independent, Charlton, and not winning. Makes it very tough on your recruiting.
It really does. UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso, New Mexico State, UMass, and then Akron, Massachusetts, and also Akron are in great football states, but it doesn't transfer over to the college level. Big C, your thoughts?
Akron, their record is just like their name, Charlton, zip. They're 0-10 on the team.
Yeah, I was told as a young boy growing up, zip your mouth sometime when I talk back, Big C. I understand when somebody calls you a zip. Zip it, I was used to hear all the time. I want to finish out today's show. Some FCS coaches polls used to be called Division I AA, or Division II. North Dakota State, they're actually 11-0. James Madison's number 2 there at 10-0. Montana is number 3 at 9-2. Sacramento State's number 4 at 8-3. South Dakota State is number 5 at 8-3. Number 6, Illinois State, 8-3. Number 7, Weber State, 8-3. Number 9, Montana State, 8-3. And Kennesaw State and Northern Iowa round out being tied for the top 10. Could you imagine you have a state like Montana and Montana State are both ranked in one of the most least populous states in the Union. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, they play good old hard-nosed football, Charlton, in that Division II program up there. The Bobcats and the Grizzlies, there have been stalwarts. I think they play in the Big Sky Conference up there, and they don't let people down, Charlton, especially when the weather gets bad. They really have a home field advantage.
They want to say, zip the window, close that when it's cold outside. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm hoping that we've gotten rid of all the sports scandals and negativity this week, Charlton, and we can have a pleasant week of just some exciting performances the rest of the week.
And I hope the same. I hope that everybody stays healthy, wealthy, and wise. Please stop the internet dating. You don't know who's on the other side. Every Monday through Friday at 5 to 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.